Alrighty, hello, and welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel. Check out great theories, concepts, and discoveries that you're probably not familiar with, things that have been suppressed, things that the powers that be don't want you to really know about. Um, but these are things that are very impactful and would really benefit you if you only knew. And this is a segment that we have that is called Your Blind Side. This is for patriots and the diggers and the truthers out there who have been digging up the info war, the 20th and 21st century digs that are uncovering conspiracies and hoaxes and scams and psyops. But maybe you don't have the time yet to dig a little bit deeper and go back further in history. And so I'm here to let you know what might be in your blind side or at your blind side or things that you might have to look out for here in the future. And yesterday we talked a little bit about um, the origins, the Roman origins of rabbinical Judaism, and that the Romans uh, basically tried to hijack Judaism in general here in the late first century at the heels of this war between the Romans and the Jews from 66 to 73 AD that led to the utter destruction of Jerusalem and led to the Romans, even though they had decimated the Jews, they knew that the Jews were coming back. They were resilient, and there'd be just a matter of time before there was another uh, uprising, another revolt, and the Romans reached into their bag of tricks, well-worn bag that um, uh, they were masters of the psychological operation. Wasn't not just the CIA. It went way back, and they have attempted to really hijack Judaism in a number of ways. One of the ways was to take the Pharisees and to kind of confine them. I think at the time the Pharisees were really um, more of a movement toward uh, ethical behavior, not so much religious, but more humanists. Um, they were really against slavery, and which was rampant in the Roman Empire, um, and looking for some type of, I don't want to use the word democracy, but more representative rights and more equality in general. And the Romans tried to kind of box them into an idea that was more um, take these scriptures, your Torah, your Old Testament writings, and um, you know, pour over them and make commentaries on them and expand on them, expound on them, and um, you know, uh, forget about, the social reforming and the political aspects, and just stay with the Jewish texts, and rehash them over and over and over again, in every permutation. And the story is with this guy, Yohanan Ben Zakkai. And the Jewish teacher fled Jerusalem, upon the siege of the Romans there in 68 AD, 69 AD maybe. Took refuge in a Roman camp, and there, anticipating the Roman victory, he asked Vespasian for permission. And Vespasian was the Roman general, who eventually, very soon thereafter, becomes the new emperor. And he asked Vespasian for permission to found an academy for Jewish teachers in Jamnia, a Roman, the Roman town already that the Romans had already recovered. And now that, to me, is kind of a myth, and it doesn't ring true. It's very similar, and parallel to what Josephus writes about in his autobiography, um, that they both surrendered to Vespasian, and then they both gave Vespasian the star prophecy, saying that I foresee that in the near future you will become the new emperor. And um, now, this star prophecy is a Jewish thing that is only supposed to be given to other Jews. So that would be highly unusual to start with. Um, for both of them to do it, um, is a red flag. And then the fact that Vespasian eventually does become the new emperor, and that as a result of their giving him this star prophecy, he looks upon both of them very favorably, even though they are both Jews who surrender to him. Um, that is highly unusual as well, because the Roman military generally, they parade defeated enemies uh, through the streets of, I think it's called Capitolina in Rome, um, and they parade the enemy through the streets and drag them, while all the crowds are cheering, and it's a big kind of a ritual for them to really humiliate the enemy. And so for Vespasian to, in one case, with Johann Ben Zakkai, to give him a land grant for the founding of a campus for the endless study of the Jewish scriptures, and on the other hand, to pardon Josephus and bring him to Rome for him to become one of the new court historians, hook him up with uh, a townhouse at Caesar's palace, and adopt him as a member of his family, so that he's now known as Flavius Josephus, one of the a member of the Flavian dynasty of Caesars. That is very, very difficult to believe that that would have actually happened. But that's what it says. And but what's much more likely is that the Romans are in on this, and these are two prongs of the same psychological operation. On one hand, they're attempting to take Jewish Pharisees and to get them distracted by the Torah, and by going over it, endlessly, because they're trying to kind of get the Jews to center their lives around the Torah now, whereas before the Jewish experience was centered around the Temple of Jerusalem. But the Romans just got done destroying the Temple of Jerusalem and banishing the Jews from that temple. And so the consolation prize is this campus at Jamnia for them to now center their lives around the Torah. And then on the other hand, um, the Romans are dealing with the more zealous Jews, the ones who are revolting and, and creating insurrections and, you know, um, the ones who are messianic, who you know uh, are responding to the Torah prophecies for um, delivering the Jews from the oppressing power. And that is the Josephus side, where Josephus becomes the new court historian, and he writes the 7-volume War of the Jews. And at the same time, Josephus writes the New Testament, or at least the Gospels at this time. Um, the and so the New Testament, the Gospels, were part of this Roman psychological operation to uh, really destroy Judaism and divert it into a Roman religion. And so Titus Caesar, Vespasian's son, is basically written into the script in Josephus as being the second coming of Jesus. The prophecies that Jesus makes in the New Testament are fulfilled to the letter in the words of Josephus, as the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem is the sign of the second coming of Jesus. And General Titus, Vespasian's son, was the instrument of the destruction of Jerusalem. So this is, gives a little bit more depth to the Roman origins hypothesis for the New Testament. It wasn't just a one-off, like a one-off psyop. It was part of a larger plan to, destroy Judaism in general. Not just some kind of, stray thing that they are attempting to create this idea of Christianity. It was part of a larger plot to destroy Judaism. Now, one more thing that I'd like to point out is that I heard one podcaster talk about it today. I believe in God, and so therefore I also believe in Satan. And those two things are not parallels. And I agree with Dewey Larson and his reciprocal system in his book Beyond Space and Time. God, or what Larson calls Sector 3, is is all-encompassing, omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient, all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-present. It is everywhere. Whereas evil is local, it's localized, it's small. It comes from uh, really from the human. It's it is not that this um, supernatural, like very big um, uh, competitor to God. It is a small coming from from the inside. It is a local manifestation. Each different planet, or so to speak, has their own evils, their own set of evils. It is not a transcendent force, and I think that again is something that the Romans wrote into the New Testament. It is not part of the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, there the term Satan is used, but Satan is always used with a "the" in front of it. The Satan. It means adversary or obstacle, and it always in the Old Testament, the handful of times it's used, it is used as a descriptor of a human being, the Satan, the obstacle, the adversary. Um, it is not this transcendent, supernatural thing that the Romans created as part of their psychological operation, that is this, competitor to God. Um, in the Old Testament, the Satan is a is kind of an employee of God. Um, and obeys God. So I think that's very much of a psychological operation that a lot of the patriot movement has fallen under. This belief in Satan, and that all evil is to be explained in those terms, and that I think is what I would call uh, just it takes away your agency. Um, it is deterministic. And so I would check yourself on the Satan and look at your Old Testament and compare it. Look at your Old Testament Satan and compare it with your New Testament Satan. And, wonder why there's this big change. Um, okay, so I think we're going to leave it right there, and we will get into another subject that um, alerts you to your blind sides on the next episode. But thanks for tuning in today. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and contribute, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in today. Have a great day.